arrived only seconds after I blew out the candle. I extinguished the candle at exactly midnight. The older nurse shook her head, annoyed for some reason, most likely because she'd been awakened at such an hour. But how could anyone have fallen asleep during that wicked display of thunder and lightning? They were quiet for a few moments, long enough for them both to hear the clicking of the old circular wall clock hanging above the arched entrance. They stared at each other, listened to the tick-tick, trying to make sense of it. Nurse Choni said, "When did that clock start working?" Nurse Pratesi stared at it, at the thin hands as they clicked. The clock, a donation from a Dutch clockmaker, hadn't worked in more than 100 years, having stopped during an equally violent storm in the spring of 1761. And now, here it was, suddenly ticking again. Nurse Choni held up her candle for a closer look at the wall clock. The hands showed a time of 2:13. "It was frozen at midnight, was it not?" asked Nurse Pratesi. "For over a century," the older nurse mumbled, unblinking. "It must have started again at the beginning of the storm." Nurse Choni placed down her candle and scribbled in the ledger. The baby. A streak of orange caught the young nurse's eye. She stepped closer to the wheel. The baby had hair like fire and eyes green as plump olives. Still no crying. She smiled, and the baby mirrored it. Were babies this young even aware enough to smile? She'd certainly never seen one smile while inside the wheel. She lifted the infant from the blankets and cradled her in her arms. The closeness brought sudden warmth to her heart. There was no time to be melancholy. She'd been warned of that the first day. The babies were much better off here at the Hospital of the Innocents than abandoned on the streets of Florence. "You're crying." The older nurse again glanced at the clock. "Check the wheel for any marks." Nurse Pratesi wiped her cheeks and looked inside the wheel. Often the parents, mostly the mothers, would leave a mark or token of recognition with the abandoned babies, like a charm broken in half, with one piece left with the baby and the other kept by the parents, in hopes that one day they can be reunited. The other half would offer proof. She searched the tousled blanket but discovered no such item. "I don't see anything, Nurse Choni." The older nurse didn't respond. She was busy running her finger down a list of girl names. The finger stopped, tapped the worn list. "We'll call her Magdalena." "And a surname?" The two nurses studied each other. "Salvato." "Saved." They shook their heads simultaneously, Nurse Pratesi more emphatically. For some reason, she now felt more saved than this baby. Though she had uttered her misgivings to no one, she had been on the verge of leaving the hospital in search of different work. But now... "Fortuna," the older nurse offered. Nurse Pratesi shook her head. Luck didn't seem right either. And then she looked up, eyes enlarged as a thought struck. "Rotile." She didn't form it as a question to her superior, but rather more of a statement of fact. "Magdalena Rotile." The older nurse pondered and then nodded in agreement. Magdalena of the Wheel. The younger nurse gathered courage. "You're crying too." Nurse Choni looked away, wiped her cheeks. "Hurry on. Find the wet nurse."
1. November 1945. Gandy, California. Private First Class Vittorio Gandy walked the narrow sidewalk with a standard army duffel in each hand. The weight of the bags kept his hands from shaking. American flags rippled from porches, bits of color under a low, gray November sky. Miss Cannon's azalea bushes looked to be blue.